Hello and welcome to Art Rhode Island. I'm Martina Windels. Today's conversation will be about artisan working with artists. Joining me in the studio are Nicole Chesney. She's currently working on a large installation for the new residence hall at Massachusetts College of Art in Boston, and a piece commissioned for Building 7 at the World Trade Center in New York. Locally, her work can be admired in the lobby of the new building at the Wheeler School in Providence. Paul Amaral. He is the owner and president of Amaral Custom Fabrication, a business specializing in the construction of large-scale sculptures for artists like Keith Haring, Roy Lichtenstein, and Martin Puryear, among others. And Drake Patten, the executive director of The Steelyard in Providence. Founded 10 years ago, on the site of the former Providence Steel and Iron Complex, the Steelyard is an industrial arts facility and education center in Olneyville. Before joining the Steelyard in 2006, Drake Patten was the executive director of the Rhode Island Council for the Humanities. Welcome, and thank you all for coming here today.
Thank you.
Let's start with you, Nicole. You work in glass, and your work is getting increasingly larger, and involving contractors. So.
Yes,
How does that work? How does that collaboration work?
Well, in the last 4 or 5 years, my studio practice has evolved in such a way that I continue to make unique studio works that are a very solitary pursuit, and I have been also getting these larger public scale, architectural scale commissions, and that relies upon an enormous amount of outside help.
So the piece at the Wheeler School, that was the first large installation that you worked on? That
was the first piece that existed in a public space, so to speak.
And that required severe big help with contractors.
Exactly, and outside fabricators. And I had done a project for a private residence on a similar scale, but the nature of a private residence is entirely different than a highly trafficked public space.
There's a video here of your work, so let's take a look at that. And it has some of the work in it.
I think that's every artist's dream, is that you have opportunities to create pieces that are far bigger in a way than the tangible result at the end. I had gotten to know Providence a little bit as an undergrad in Boston and decided that the art community seemed great. It was a really reasonable cost of living for a great quality of life, close to Boston, close to New York. I just decided that I would give it a try. If I didn't like it, I could always move. Every day I'm here, I love it more and more. I just have never lived and worked anywhere where it was easier and more conducive to making my work. I could never have this life in Boston or New York. The Chamber of Commerce here understands that artists are businesses, so I'm able to, as a chamber member, buy health insurance. I mean, those things are hugely important to me. But there's still enough smaller shops that they're interested and willing to do the kinds of projects that artists need. The glass is now all cut and edged for me, and the fabricator I have the longest relationship with, they're right here. They are incredible, and it's having resources like that make all the difference.
So these resources you talk about, are they not as readily available other places? Is that what I gather from that?
Yeah, it's been my experience. Not only are they available in abundance in this area, but I find that there's an ease of accessibility. People are very willing to exchange referrals. This is something that we had talked about before the program even began.
Small town.
Yeah, it really is, and that in and of itself is a treasure, because you can't know what's available if someone's not willing to share that with you. These are hyper-specialized things that you can't just Google or
So you couldn't do your work without them. So then, when you decided to move to Rhode Island, was that a reason? Was that a
Well, my work has evolved since arriving in Rhode Island, capitalizing upon the resources that are here. I mean, if I didn't have access to the resources that are here, I would be working very differently. But I feel that my artistic growth has had a lot to do with the fact that with the aid of all of the other artisans and fabricators in this area, I'm able to focus on the highest and best use of my time.
Right, so it's like, it's a back and forth.
Yes.
Like, because you have the services, your work changes, and now you couldn't do your work without this.
And I don't have any staff, so this whole amazing team of people that helps me achieve my work allows me to actually not have staff, which allows me to be more flexible and more creative because I can simply focus on pursuing exactly what it is I want to pursue.
And their function is in a contractor.
Exactly.
Let's go to Paul, because you often find yourself on the other side of that very conversation, right?
Absolutely.
Tell us what you do.
I am fortunate to have, for the past 20+ years, been involved in large-scale construction of outdoor sculpture. As we all know, Rhode Island was the home of the America's Cup for many, many years, and there were a number of large builders, America's Cup 12-meter yacht builders or marine builders, located in the area. However, when the America's Cup literally went south,
to San Diego, right?
Yes. These builders were left scuffling for work. And I saw an opportunity where we had spent a lot of time learning how to do large-scale, corrosion-resistant fabrications. I saw an opportunity to market myself to artists.
What are the artists, who are the artists you worked for?
The very first sculpture that I ever was involved with was in 1988, and that was Claes Oldenburg, the Spoon Bridge in Cherry at the Walker Art Museum in Minneapolis. And Oldenburg discovered us. He was specifically looking for a marine builder to shape the curves of the aluminum into that beautiful spoon that has the cherry on the tip. We were still involved in boat building at the time, but sort of the balance got shifted to large-scale artwork soon.
So they come to you because you can do all those complicated things.
Yeah,
the curves and
we can work
aluminum
with the curves.
and bronze and.
Yeah, it's. I apprenticed as a young adult. As a blacksmith, as a sheet metal mechanic, as a painter. So I personally learned how to work with a number of different metals. Really got very skilled at the aluminum thing. And when I went out marketing to some of the artists, we had very good success. I followed up the Oldenburg with landing a project from the Lichtenstein Foundation, and it was the biggest outdoor sculpture collection that they had ever commissioned. And we were very successful with it. And I followed that up with a bronze by Martin Purrier that's at the Ronald Reagan Center in Washington, D.C. So we've had some really good success.
And you also do the work for some of the local artists. I know that Jonathan Bonner's piece
I've worked with Jonathan
in your shop. So.
Jim Reynolds. Tom Odell, who's a Cape Cod artist, and a couple of other people. We've been able to service them, yeah.
So the success of this is because you are so highly specialized?
I think so. You know, we building America's Cup yachts is to a Lloyd's Registry of Shipping specification, which is extremely stringent. It requires strong, light, corrosion resistant. And we took that same technology and applied it to large-scale art. And
same conditions, just doesn't have to float, right?
It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to float. It has to withstand hurricane force winds if you're going to put it on South Coast Florida location. So there's some strength issues that you do concern yourself with. And those same techniques just carry over beautifully to the large-scale art. And what we've discovered is that our artwork is outlasting a lot of our competitors.
That's good.
Yes. Yeah.
So is metalworking the sort of the beef of it? Is that sort of your real, the largest part of what you do?
It is. It is.
It's a long history of that in Rhode Island, too.
A long history of metal building.
Actually,
However,
speaking of, sorry, didn't mean to
I'm
cut
sorry.
you.
However, I did spend some time with some of the fiberglass builders, too, and we have some skills there.
Speaking of metalworking, Drake, at the Steelyard, you make lots of things out of metal.
We do.
Let's hear about that.
Well, it's an interesting follow-up to both of you. We are on the former site of Providence Steel and Iron, and this was a very long-term business in Rhode Island that failed in the beginning of this century, and we've sort of rethought how that business happened. So today we are teachers, but we're also designers and builders, so we sort of incorporate what you've been speaking about. And really, as you said, Martina, we're building on a tradition. And I think the critical piece for us is that we're interested in building a sort of new scale and economy of metalworking. We don't only teach metals, we also work in ceramics and glass, but there's no question that forging, welding, casting, small metal, so jewelry and hollow work are our primary focus.
So the classes you offer, who takes them?
Pretty much anyone. I mean, in metal, on the metal side, it has to be 16 and up, but we have everything from retirees to lawyers to RISD students to young kids who, you know, want to make a crazy bike or have this fantasy about building something really large and crazy. So it's functional and artistic, and our focus is on really on both. We don't privilege one or the other.
Now, a component of this, though, is workforce training, right?
Yes.
And that is, it's a little different as far as the audience goes and as far as the structure of the class goes.
Yes, and in part, I think our desired outcomes. We are really focusing on 18 to 24-year-olds. We found that that's a group of young people, in the majority males at this point, who are underemployed, unemployed, and kind of forgotten. There are a lot of programs that meet their needs.
How many students do you have in the class?
10 per class. It's a very small class format. Our focus is on not necessarily building a new generation of metal workers, but we want to give them the skill set, and you speak to this very well because there's a lot of directions you can take it once you've got the skill. So the class is much more focused on both giving them the sense that they can fabricate, they make an individual project and a joint project that goes out into the community. But they also get soft skills. They learn to interview, they learn how to show up and be responsible, and they're paid. So there are a number of things we're trying to accomplish with that program.
Well, it's interesting. It's, I mean, skill building, but it harks right back to a long tradition. And here you are in the Providence Steel and Iron Works. So it's sort of, for me, it's an interesting trajectory or come full circle somehow. Well, why does the Steelyard decide to do that?
The workforce training specifically?
Yes, specific, I mean.
Well, we absolutely find, I mean, our mission has been from the beginning to really revitalize the economy through creative means. We believe it can be done. And with this particular generation, we are seeing the traditions that are Rhode Island based, this sort of vernacular knowledge that we have in industry, as really coming forward and being our strength. It's just at a different scale. I mean, we have to accept that. And I think both of you spoke to that. I mean, there's a different level of production happening. There's an incredible ability to connect in with a knowledge base and other skill sets. We don't do everything at the Steelyard, but everything that we do with our public projects, which is a street amenities project we do where we put things out onto the street, garbage cans, bike racks, tree guards. So those are all using other skill sets from other people.
So there's a real need for that kind of skill.
We believe
hands-on making stuff,
I think
like
that,
we used to.
Yeah. I think that changes how the world works if people understand process. I think, I'm sure both of you see that. I mean, it's a eye-opening moment for people just to understand how something works. So.
That good old hands-on stuff, right? So do you see a potential for that to grow in Rhode Island? I mean, we happen to also be at a point in the economy where where people need jobs and things to do. So can this be scaled up?
Absolutely. I mean, I think for us, and maybe we're, maybe we're very idealistic, but that's worked so far. I think for us, much like the local food movement, where people really accept that you can choose to buy local, it's a choice. And I think increasingly in Rhode Island, people are making that choice. We are seeing businesses who are asking us for skilled labor. They want it. They know that if someone goes through our program, they're going to have a certain skill set, so we pride ourselves on that. But I think it's actually the key to the future. I think we just have to acknowledge that there is an appropriate scale within which our creative world, which Rhode Island is so strong in still, can exist. And I think it's absolutely possible.
How many employees do you have?
Right now, about 16.
And you train them, and they must be also highly specialized in.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough that in the metal shop, I'm able to pick and choose from highly skilled people. The paint shop is a little different. It's dirty work, it's hard work, it's back-breaking work, really. We do a lot of sanding. So there's a young crew, and they've been extremely loyal. I've had one guy sanding for almost 6 years now. He just loves working on what he's working on.
So they get excited about the projects they work on?
Yeah.
Because I was very excited coming to your shop, and it's the closest I've ever been to a Keith Haring or
I
Lichtenstein.
wanted to talk about the skill sets that we're discussing. And one of the things about the art industry is that there's a lot of skill sets that are no longer economically viable outside of outside of the art world, in the commercial world. Lost wax casting, who does that?
Right.
No commercial entity in its right mind would think of lost wax casting something. But certainly in the art world, it's critical.
And it's common.
So
and in Rhode Island, you can find it.
Yeah.
It's almost like a repository of lost skills.
I like that, a repository of lost skills.
And it's extremely important. Will it ever come back again in the future in a commercial level? Probably not. But here's where you're going to find these skills 150 years from now.
Yeah.
And for me, as an artist who is the great beneficiary of what both of you are contributing to the community, is that I'm only interested in making one unique object. So for me to reach out to a traditional manufacturer or fabricator whose model is based on thousands of widgets and with the primary goal of the lowest cost per unit, my goal is the most unique work of art with unwavering attention to detail and whatever it takes in service of that goal. And it's when an artist finds someone willing to bring a sense of ownership to that project, the experience is, I wouldn't be able to do the projects that I do if I didn't have those relationships. And whether either of you realize it or not, I have actually pursued applying for projects knowing that, for example, there are resources even that I'm not currently using, but I could have this. We could reach out to the Steelyard if this was accepted, and that's exciting.
Well, another part of that is you're doing now a project in Massachusetts and one in New York, and you're working with people in Rhode Island to make these projects. So not only is this a skill that is needed and that is thought after, but it can also be sort of exported in a way because of your work. And that goes for you too. When I was there was a piece coming back from the Dominican Republic to be repaired. So
that's right.
That sort of has economic implications beyond Rhode Island in that way. So I guess we should.
Tomorrow I'm meeting with someone about a possible project in Beijing.
You get to go there then?
Possibly.
That would be fun. I would like to ask you all to make a closing statement, and it's kind of long and convoluted because I think what we're trying to tackle here is kind of a bigger thing. So and part of it we already answered, but does this kind of specialized manufacturing present an opportunity for Rhode Island? And do the industrial arts have a potential to grow with that? And if so, how? Should Rhode Island expand that niche or that sort of opportunity? If so, why? And also, where do you see your own organization, your own work in that possible trajectory?
Well, as someone who is increasing relying on that skill set, I of course would like to see it enhanced and expanded. I can't speak specifically to the economic impact of it, but I know that my relationship with the teams that I work with, they are meaningful, substantive jobs, as opposed to low wage. You know, and I think that that's critical. That can't be underestimated. The impact of that can't be underestimated today.
So you want to?
Well, I mean, I just think that the idea of labor and craft, I mean, I think we've let that go as something valuable. And that's not just true to Rhode Island, that's true nationally. But I think putting up sort of new value on that, and I actually do think it's an answer for Rhode Island. It's probably not the answer. I think there are a lot of things that need to be part of the answer. But Rhode Island had a tradition. We sort of abandoned it, but the knowledge is still there, and to pick that up again and to sort of celebrate it, and also to recognize its role. I mean, skilled labor is incredibly important. We
abandoned it. Why?
Well, I mean, I have my own theories on that. I mean, certainly there were, well, I mean, there were some, I think there's some truth to the idea that overseas competition certainly affected the U.S., but increasingly what I've discovered working at the Steelyard and talking with other similarly scaled businesses or places that have had failure, as they've termed it, part of it has to do with we really let the idea that labor was a valuable thing go in this country, and the idea of working with your hands became not as noble as being a knowledge worker. And I think we've replaced the idea of skilled labor with the idea that you've got to be a tech worker, or we've also replaced it with service. And I think when we lost that sense of pride, it was generational certainly at the company that we bought our place from and sort of moved into, was a lack of interest on the part of the youngest generation. When that starts to happen, you lose that tradition because it doesn't get passed on.
It's also hard work, that's the other thing.
It is hard work, absolutely.
It's physical work.
Yes.
It's hard work, it's dirty work.
It is dirty work.
And sort of this, like, getting out of a mill situation,
yes.
It's like I said before, it's sort of it's coming back. And I see it in part of this whole local food, you mentioned that, grow your own vegetables, back to the land, let's slow down, let's really look at, what matters in life and art, whatever. So
it does matter. We talked about the 10,000 widgets that the local people want to make. They don't want to talk to you unless it's 10,000 widgets. But let's not forget, one 70-foot yacht is no longer being built in this country. It's being built in New Zealand because of the labor rates, because of the... So it's not just the high volume, small parts that have been lost. It's some of the other things. And my ability to adapt those skills to the art world means that out of the 16 employees that I have, I think 12 of them are head of household with families and mortgages. Now, certainly the McDonald's up the street has more employees than I do.
Right.
Yeah.
But you probably pay yours more.
My employees contribute a whole lot more to the local economy than what McDonald's employees do. So it's important. And what I found over the years that I've been involved with this is that the more it goes offshore, the more that the widgets approach is required. There's a missing link of people who want one-off. And I not only service artists, I service a number of oceanographic people down on Cape Cod who have sonar equipment and things like that, but it's very low volume.
But it's also highly specialized
It's
again,
highly
right? So
specialized.
you have to really know what you're doing.
Well, I don't get involved with the electronics end of it, but the bodies that these things are put in, which are fiberglass, and they go in the water. Sounds familiar. I know how to do that. I know how to do that, so we're successful at that.
I also think there's value to knowing who's making the stuff that you're using, that you're buying. I mean, just the knowledge that you can actually go meet a maker. I think that's really valuable for everyone. And in Rhode Island, we've got that in spades. I mean,
Yeah,
really
I
do.
can't solve everybody's problems, but I can at least point you to someone that I think might be able to help you
I think
if I
that's-
can't.
That's great. Thank you all for coming to the studio today. Maybe next time when you look at a sculpture or an installation, in addition to enjoying the art, you will think about the people that worked on it and the highly specialized skills required to build it. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, I'm Martina Windels for Art Rhode Island. Goodbye.